Hello. It is such a pleasure to be here as always. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Boy, do we have a class today. And we are continuing our 30-day challenge. Hi, everybody. Andy, Tara, happy Sunday. Nick, Andy. So good to see you guys. I'm so happy to connect with you. Fire sign, welcome. All right, guys, we got a lot to talk about. And today is day 7 of our 30-day challenge into shadow work, into every layer, every aspect, every core. We are breaking down shadow work. We are demystifying shadow work to really understand what and how to do it. Because this is the number one question that I get. And obviously, when we talk about all of these incredible concepts, we always come down to the very core question, which is, okay, these concepts are really cool. How do I integrate them? And the answer is shadow work. You literally cannot integrate any concept. You can't open up your mind beyond your physical understanding, limited emotional range. You can't access higher dimensional faculties if you are not doing shadow work, because shadow work is the refinement of your frequency. Okay. So if you don't refine your frequency, essentially you can't access the multitude and the multidimensionality of your highest potential. It's just impossible. Your multidimensionality is the refinement of your higher faculties. And you all have that. That's instilled in the architecture of your being in all dimensions. And so, this is information that I'm gathering after years of deep internal work, deep internal shadow work. Everything that I share with you about the shadow work are things that I've actually walked through, I've actually done, I've gone through the deepest, darkest parts, which is why I can speak to the multi-layers of them, not only how one can experience it, but also to help you kind of be prepared for the little questions that always come up when you reach certain walls and you don't know how to go past that. In my early journey, I found that it was just impossible to find literature on that, even videos. And this is way back in the early 2000s. Finding information about the shadow, about like intricate detail, is something that was unheard of, at least to me. Maybe maybe you know of some deep, step by step. But I had not found that. So walking through these things, and of course, once again, I want to be very clear that the whole point of the shadow work is for you to understand yourself deeply. How do you function? How you can access the core root of your understanding, and the way you perceive things is going to be different than me. You need to discover for yourself. So all this information I'm sharing with you is a general overview of it. You need to walk through that fire, walk through that work to see if it's true for you, to see how it manifests for you. How you experience it can be very different. And that is the most important goal, is that you are able to find that, to experience that. That is my hope for you, okay? That you actually walk through that and explore. Okay, so I want to thank you so much for being here. It is such an honor. Today, we're going to talk about, let me see, how should I frame this? Looking at dark emotions is the reason why the inability to look at our dark emotions and getting stuck in the dark emotions, getting stuck in emotional traumas, is actually one of the reasons why people leave shadow work immediately. Okay, this is why this is usually the point where they start to get a big picture of everything. And right when they get there, they retreat. They don't want to go any further, because this is the crossing point. This is the portal of actual transformation. If you are not able to manage strong, deep, powerful emotions, it will be incredibly difficult for you to hold space for the whole of you. Okay, because most people, and in a lot of spiritual practices, unfortunately, a lot of New Age practices, they talk about becoming the light, being positive, maintaining, sustaining a positivity. And that can be a tremendous disservice to your deep understanding and integration of of your view, of your perception, of your potential. Okay, because you need to be able to look at deep, deep, heavy emotions. It's the deepest sorrows, the deepest fears, the terrors, the rage, the disgust, the anger that are actually the main metal, the raw metal that we then transform into gold. Okay, and so this is essentially where your greatest power is. This is all of the power, all of your potential, everything that has your creativity, your love is withheld within these layers of shadows and powerful emotions. So today we're going to look at the psychology, emotional biology, spiritual science, and energetics of how to process strong, powerful emotions. I'm going to walk you through. And also, I want to mention before I drop in that I have a workbook that I designed as a result of this presentation that you can actually learn to work through each of your difficult emotions. And that will be available at my store after today's live today. And I also wanted to mention that I'm going to be adding a lot of workbooks, really proactive workbooks to my store. Let me actually show you where to find that for those of you that are interested, because yesterday I just published a really exciting workbook for discernment. Okay. How many times do I hear you guys tell me that you have such a hard time discerning? It's difficult for you guys to trust your intuition. It's difficult for you guys to implement the messages that your intuition is telling you. Well, I completely understand that. And there's a protocol for that. There's a process for that. And I've taken a lot of time to kind of really meditate and work on the layers of coming into that intuitive connection and trust. And what does that look like? Okay. So if you guys go to my website and you go to About and you go to GPAC Store, hey, you're going to find really awesome. I don't know if you guys know this, but I do still have some of these beautiful pieces just to help you. But over here, you're going to find the inner instrument. And this was created after my intuition cultivation workshop a couple of weeks ago. But essentially, this is a workbook and it's a download digital file that you can copy and reuse and reuse and reuse. And you can make a thick binder of it. You can print it out and you can use to answer all these really, really deep and difficult questions about your intuition, how to discern properly. Okay, what are you feeling? I mean, I go really deep into every layer of discernment in order for you to actually access and train yourself to really listen to the message. And this will help you differentiate the difference between your emotional impression, your projections, your instincts, and actual true intuition. Okay, so it's a series of questions that you can utilize to navigate intuition in a way that is super easy. And I've kind of tested this myself in many occasions where I have really, really strong questions that I need answers for. And it was just fantastic. It was very useful. And I just found it amazing. So I was thinking the other day, you know what, I'm going to share that with you guys because I think it's a really a great tool to have. Okay. All right, my loves. So let's jump into it. And then the next, this program, this workbook is not up there yet. It's going to be up there today, right after this call. I'm just having my team set it up in the back end. Okay, so let's jump into it. How many of you have experienced extremely strong emotions that you have not been able to process? Okay, just go ahead and put it down in the chat. Like, what emotion is the emotion that you have the most difficulty processing? Okay. And so when we're talking about dark emotions, we're talking about shame, self-hatred, disgust, rage, envy, worthlessness. We literally become an internal prosecutor. It's the judgmental part of us that is constantly judging us. Okay. So today we already know we have a shadow. This is about looking at what are we projecting? And the parts that we are disowning in all of these emotions, all of these belief systems about yourself is a disowned part of yourself. It's a part that you may have never met. It's a part that you created. Remember, we talked about fragmentation. And so this is working with the beliefs that are created by that fragmentation. Okay, so as I'm talking about the shadow, these last in this series, we're dismantling every single step, right? So the first couple days we talked about the shadow, we talked about fragmentation, we talked about emotions as bioelectricity. What are they doing? How do they process? Now we're getting really into like the nitty-gritty of the actual internal work. When you discover that you have an internal fragment, which is this inner child that is creating a belief, right? For example, mom doesn't pay enough attention to you as a child. And so you begin to feel that you are unlovable, you are unworthy, you are not good enough, you are a burden. Okay. So these are the core, these are the root questions. And so we're looking at something, all these most primitive beliefs about ourselves. When we have rejected material that is no longer projected outward, but turned inward against the self, here's what happens is that as soon as we pick up the external environmental emotion and we start projecting that towards the self, especially as a child, because the child has a hard time individuating from the parent. It doesn't know, it literally is birthed from the womb of the mother. And we literally are entangled and enmeshed cellular at the cellular level. We are holding cells of our mother is holding cells of us, our father as well. But we have these powerful enmeshments with the parent that we can't differentiate our own thoughts, our own emotions, our own feelings about experiences. Okay, this is where the shadow work becomes visceral, because where it becomes dangerous if misunderstood, and where it becomes profoundly transformational if approached with precision and care. The deepest dark emotions are often not simply emotions, they are internalized survival structures. Ancient decisions about what is permissible to feel, to need, to be, they spark the language of verdict rather than experience. Let's look at the psychological element, which is the strongest root of spiritual expression. Okay. So the moment that we turn these beliefs, these shadows inward, it becomes especially powerful when the psyche cannot safely direct an emotion towards its true source. A child might feel rage towards a parent, disgust towards an unsafe environment, or hatred towards an abuser. But if that emotion threatens attachment, belonging, or survival, the psyche may reverse its direction entirely. One, for example, they hurt me. The original, the accurate perception of external harm. Two, there's something wrong with me. The reversal would be wound becomes identity. Three, I'm bad for being angry. The emotion itself becomes evidence of unworthiness. Okay, so when I talk about when we do shadow work, we want to try to find the highest truth. What am I talking about? We are looking for evidence-based concepts, evidence-based beliefs. In the same way that we use scientific methods to find whether things are real in our material world, in the psychic world, we also can use a form of evidence, because in that evidence, we are also discovering what is actually true. And we're not looking at what's temporarily true. We're looking at what is universally true, what is in higher order, what is operating by higher order. And so you'll see later on, one of the most important questions will be, is it true? Okay, but we question these belief systems. 4, I'm rejectable. The experience of rejection becomes a permanent verdict on the self. The wound becomes identity. This is the beginning of internal persecution, and it's the psyche's attempt at a terrible kind of intelligence. If I can control whether I am loved by making myself feel better, I'm less helpless than if I love simply without withheld arbitrarily. Okay. The dark emotion is secondary. Okay, so I talked many times about primary, secondary, tertiary emotions. These we want to get to the root, which is essentially the primary emotion. This distinction is essential for advanced practitioners. So what presents as self-hatred, shame, or disgust is rarely the original emotional event. And it's really important to distinguish this because a lot of people that have this feeling, first of all, they have a hard time accessing this feeling to begin with. Usually, shame, hatred, and disgust. These are emotions that we have to take a moment to get to, and I'll talk about how in a second. Okay, so for example, in this example, the core is I'm hurt, right? Something hurts us. We experience an abandonment, a rejection. It's the primary emotional pain. Then it's rejection and shame. We identify that as rejection. I should not be hurt. Something is wrong. This is a really important belief system to begin to dismantle as well, because this is where we start to see the holes in the matrix. Okay. You see our indoctrination, social engineering, this concept of what is right and what is wrong in a very dualistic framed reality causes a tremendous amount of confusion for you, especially as a child. Because when you're a child, you are still connecting to the divine, at least within the first 7 years. You are still very clear as you are whole. And little by little, that starts to become disconnected because of what you pick up from the external. Okay. And so, for example, when we start to feel a disassociation, a disconnect between what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, and what we believe should be or what we've been told should be. We might watch a movie where families are so loving and wonderful and everyone's good. And then we look at our own system and it's, not like that. And so those little subconscious comparisons, they begin to create a fragmentation, a disassociation, and a disconnect with what is true. Okay. So here the person begins to experience these rejections and shame, and then that turns into attack and identity. Hate the weakness. I am weak. Okay, so the belief that they created is that this pain is somehow a vulnerability. It's a dangerous thing to feel this pain. Okay, so it starts to turn into this concept of weakness. I am weak. I am unworthy. I'm not good. And these belief systems are very, very invasive in all of our lives. And we might not even realize how they are functioning in the back of your mind. I want you to take a moment to take a look at what are the primary emotions. You've been working with me for a while. So I often ask you, what is the emotion that is the theme of your life? What are you always feeling from childhood until now? What seems to be the emotion that you keep coming back to? Okay. It could be a feeling of unworthiness, a feeling of loneliness, a feeling of disconnect, a feeling of trying to meet needs. Okay. Whatever it is, that is your entryway into this dynamic, this multi-layered system of accessing the core information of emotion. Okay. And so advanced integration, therefore, asks not how do I resolve the shame, but rather what was the emotion before the judgment arrived. This is where the original uncorrupted life force still awaits, beneath the verdict, beneath the defense, beneath the war. The internal prosecutor. This is where we experience the split when we are now going into the mechanism of what happens when we start to become fragmented on a really deep level. We create this internal prosecutor. The internal critic is frequently described as gently in popular psychology, to describe too gently in popular psychology. At its extreme, it does not simply offer feedback, it becomes an internal prosecutor, the voice that speaks in language of verdict, condemnation, and permanent judgment. For example, you are disgusting, nobody could love you, you ruin everything, you are weak, you should be ashamed, you deserve this, you will never change. The critical insight to this does not immediately silence this voice. Instead, ask what it is trying to prevent. Okay, we talked about that yesterday. Who is being protected? The answer is often remarkable. The prosecutor often believes it is. All right, let me make this legible for you guys. Uh, sorry, let me. Protecting the self through preemptive cruelty. Okay, let me give you some examples. If I humiliate you first, okay, this is where we start to create the judgmental. And remember that to embody infinite consciousness, to embody source, we learn to cultivate the 0 point, which is the non judgmental observer. And all of this work is in order to cultivate the non judgmental observer, because the non judgmental observer is the one that is integrated in all dimensional layers of itself. On the opposite side of that, what we create is a complete disassociation, fragmentation of the self, someone that is extremely compartmentalized and judgmental, not only of others and the external world, but of themselves. This is where the split starts to really become who we are as a human race. And this is really important to understand because this is what precisely we need to learn how to integrate in the next 10 years as we evolve into a higher consciousness humanity, essentially. Okay. So these are the concepts that we want to break down. I invite you to take a look if you resonate with any of these, examples, because these are taken from what I hear almost every day. One of the strongest things that I'm experiencing in my private sessions. Okay. If I humiliate you first, nobody else can humiliate you. The attack is a shield. So, what happens when we start to feel these ways about ourselves? We're humiliated as a child. So, we become a humiliator. The person that talked about how do we deal with the predator and the abuser? This is how. If I stop you from trusting, you won't make another devastating mistake, right? So if we tell ourselves, if I stop myself from trusting anyone, I'm never going to mess up again. Does that sound reasonable? No, right? So if I keep you small, you will not become a visible target. If I attack your need, you will never depend on anyone dangerous again. The prosecutor is often the protector that learned cruelty. The work is not to preserve the cruelty, it's to recover the intelligence behind it. A lot of people ask me, what does it mean if I see all this wars, these rapists, these murderers in society, and I don't want to be anything like them. I don't want to touch them. I don't want to know them. I don't want to be close to them. They should be eradicated from humanity. And when I tell you that all of the things that are happening in the world that are the deepest shadow of the collective are a reflection of what we have within us, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And don't think that it's different, because the deeper you look at your internal wounds, the deeper you understand how pain, any level of pain that you've experienced, has turned into a cruelty. Okay. And the first person that experiences that cruelty is yourself, but we become extremely desensitized from that. All of our emotions carry much deeper layers of information. The intelligence that we want to understand in each of these emotions can be as follows. Let's take a look at shame. On the surface, we have a belief, I am wrong. When shame collapses behavior into identity, its deepest wound concerns belonging. If if they really see me, I will be rejected. It does not merely say I did something unacceptable. It says I am unacceptable. Okay. And this is the survival mechanism of the psyche that we have to learn how to cultivate and support in a spiritual. We support with the higher self because the higher self has a more unified consciousness, a higher unified perception. Self-disgust, which is actually one of the most common emotions, but very few people talk about it. Okay. But self-disgust, in reference, this part of me must be expelled. Disgust is fundamentally an expulsion response. When turned inward, the person attempts to psychologically eject their body, their needs, their rage, their desire. The integrative question, what exactly have I decided should not exist in me? Okay. So right now, when I look at a lot of social media, I see a lot of people being extremely judgmental about the things that are happening without taking a moment to observe and to kind of deeply look at what is happening. And so remember that these are the survival mechanisms that start to project in our reality. Okay. This self-disgust is in everyone because this is the primordial split between the spirit and the physical. Okay, the non-physical and the physical, because the physical body is it's very dense. Okay, and we reject the density a lot. We don't want to feel, we don't want to experience. The body is all made up of sensations, feelings, senses. And so one of the biggest self-rejections that I see in people that hate themselves or reject themselves or just absolutely cannot love themselves, chronic self-hate, is a deep feeling of self-disgust. Okay. And this can be discussed towards your sexuality, your emotional needs, your sexual needs, your desire for pleasure, your desire for love, just any need that this body or mind may need can be reversed into this self disgust. Okay. And self-hatred, on the surface, one part of me must destroy another. This reveals a divided internal system. One part stands in judgment, another is condemned. The doorway, who is doing the hating, who is being hated? What does the attacking part believe would happen if the hated part were allowed to live? So I just want you to take a moment to think of one thing that you hate about yourself and ask these questions. Okay. You'll see that it all comes back to the same. And therefore, we go into a very deep self-destructive cycle. Okay. Let's continue. Worthlessness, envy, and rage, other very, very core level emotions. The worthlessness, deeper than failure, not I have failed, but I am failure itself. Not someone didn't choose me, but I am fundamentally unchoosable. Superficial affirmations fail here because they do not reach the original psychic law. The real question is not how do I convince myself I am worthy? It is why did believing I was unworthy once make sense? What did that belief protect? Envy can become toxic when it turns inward as I am inferior. But beneath envy may be desire, potential, ambition, unclaimed permission, or suppressed magnificence. The transformative question, what are they allowing themselves to embody that I have forbidden in myself? Envy can become a precise map back to abandoned potential. Rage carries enormous primitive force. It may emerge where boundaries were violated, powerlessness was prolonged, grief could not be expressed, humiliation was endured, or anger was forbidden. How many of you come from a family where they say you're not allowed to be angry? Anger is ugly. Anger is terrible. You need to learn how to control your anger. Rage is not automatically wisdom, but beneath it may be a boundary, will, self-protection, and the refusal to be violated again. Integration, true integration, means that recovering the life force imprisoned inside of this emotion is released. Every single dark emotion is holding capacity. It's holding incredible amounts of valuable information. Okay. So we need to remove ourselves from being in a completely compartmentalized way of looking at things as light and dark. It's very destructive to see things like that. Okay. So what happens is that we create an internal war. And our deepest suffering, it It's not from the original event, as we talked about Gabor Mate's quote about how we don't become hurt by the trauma, by what someone has done, but how we respond and how we integrate and process that experience within ourselves towards ourselves is actually how we hurt ourselves over and over and over again. But it comes from the conflict around it. When one part of the psyche says, I feel, and another part says, I don't feel, the organism becomes divided against itself. This creates profound internal polarization with real consequences at every level of the human system: mind, body, soul, and energy. When we have the belief, I need something, and we actually believe need is a weakness. How many of you have this belief system? I am angry. And then we subconsciously believe anger makes us bad. I want to be seen, but you actually believe visibility is dangerous. I want to live fully versus I must diminish myself to remain safe. Okay. This sustained polarization internally, it manifests as exhaustion, paralysis. You become numb, desensitized. You start to embody compulsivity, shame, or inner collapse. The goal is integration, not to choose one side. It is to become conscious, capable of holding both without becoming possessed by either. How can you hold both of these truths without becoming possessed by either of them? That is the definition of the 0 point, non-judgmental observer. Okay. Let's get into the energy. What happens when we start to create these internal wars within ourselves? And a healthy energy field, what does that look like? We talked about how the healthy energy field is a toroidal energy system of energy, okay, that is constantly moving, that is fluidly moving life force through the meridians, through the center source cord, through all of the organs of the body are working in alignment and harmoniously. But when these shadow parts of ourselves are turned against the self, the energetic problem is deeper than simply carrying a negative emotion. The human system begins generating opposite commands inside the same field. We literally start inverting our energy field. We talked about becoming centrifugal, the depletion of your life force. One part of the organism produces an authentic impulse while another part mobilizes to extinguish it. Okay. So to understand what goes wrong, we must first understand what healthy energy body looks like. The healthy, subtle energy system possesses essential qualities, not the absence of dark emotion, but the capacity of emotional energy to rise, communicate information, transform or transmute, and to continue moving. This is a healthy relationship with emotions, a healthy process in the emotional energy field of the body. Okay, so we talked about how emotions are bioelectrical. When we have a charge, a sufficient life force is available in the system. Flow, energy can move rather than becoming chronically fixed. Distribution, energy reaches all centers and peripheral field appropriately. So no holes, no blocks, no stagnation, okay? Because that's the root of illness in the body. And coherence. Different parts of the system are not working against one another. If you discover that you have an internal conflicting war within yourself about any part of your deep psyche, the deep parts of yourself, you can be sure that you have incoherent energy in the body. There's a disorder. Okay. So remember that when we talk about coming into higher frequency, it is a major misconception to think that higher frequency is only positive emotions. Higher frequency is the ability to hold all range of emotion, everything, the full spectrum. And this is what unfortunately has been so, it's been misconstrued and miscommunicated in a lot of spiritual practices. And a lot of people that I work with are recovering from that belief system because it takes hours sometimes to be able to get them to the real emotion. They're ashamed of saying that they have a negative emotion underneath there. They're ashamed of saying that they're afraid or that they feel unworthy or that they feel jealousy. They judge certain departments of emotions. So I want you to take a look at what are emotions that are taboos for you in your body. Okay. 4 energetic distortions. This is really important for you to understand how to have a beautiful energetic flow in your toroidal energy body. Contraction. When consciousness says, I cannot allow this experience, the first energetic response is contraction. The field draws inward, breath becomes restricted, the emotional current has nowhere to complete itself. Remember that everything in this universe is cyclical. The Fibonacci sequence of the universe is modeling for us how energy should be flowing in its most optimum creative state. And that is also true psychologically and somatically for the organism. When we block the pathway of natural evolution of a thought or a form or an emotion, we begin to create distortion in the body. Instead of feeling information, response, release, we create feeling, judgment, which is a block, contradiction, another block, retention. When you retain this energy in the body, it starts to crystallize into, first of all, it can crystallize into stress, anxiety, the release of chemicals that are creating inflammation in the body, so on and so forth, pain in the body, and then illness. That's why all the greatest shamans and energy healers of the world are trained to open the pathways of the body, to show you how to open these pathways. Okay, we look at, what is it called? Uh, with the needles, acupuncture. What is it for? When they work on the meridian line and they enter a needle into the body, it's designed to unblock stagnant energy, and then the body starts moving again. So we need to learn how to do that energetically, psychically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically in the body in order to come into coherence. This is a proactive work. This is what it means to be present in the moment, to be awake, to embody a higher octave, is the ability to embody these states of consciousness. Okay, congestion. Repeatedly resisted emotional material becomes congested. The pattern that continues receiving energy because it has never completed its full function, the system keeps revisiting it. Thought returns to it. Memory reinforces it. The body braces around it. The result, feeling dense, heavy, stuck, internally pressurized, unable to let go. We just can't let go because literally it's become us. And I talked about this in our talk about fragmentation, how it becomes a reference point energetically in the field. And the result of that is depletion. It's a paradox. How can someone be both congested and depleted? Because enormous energy may be contracted maintaining one unresolved structure while the rest of the system becomes under-resourced. The deeper inquiry becomes not, I don't have enough energy, but where is my energy already being used? You all have abundant amount of energy. But as I mentioned, wherever your attention is going, the most expensive currency in this universe is attention. Okay? Let's talk about inversion. The most devastating distortion, energy becomes self-directed. Anger towards another cannot be expressed safely. So the system turns the aggressive current inward. The energy that should have defended the self becomes the energy attacking the self. How many times have you guys felt completely violated by someone? Someone really offended you or did something to cross your boundaries. And instead of saying what you want to say, you held it in because you were afraid of retaliation, you were afraid of rejection, you were trying to control the situation, you were trying to protect yourself. Okay, so that is a very toxic loop, and it's a very important key of a self-hating act, a self-retaliating, self-affecting act. Okay, aggression becomes self-punishment, protection becomes isolation, desire becomes obsession. Let's talk about how to do the shadow work when we reach one of these emotions. Okay, I talked about primary, secondary, tertiary emotion. Within that, you're going to find a plethora of belief systems that begin to emerge as you identify each of these layers of emotions in your body. Dark emotion is rarely singular. It arrives as an emotional layers, layer upon layer of feelings and reactions to feelings, each adding density to the field. When a practitioner reports simply feeling exhausted, there may be 7 distinct energetic commands running beneath the surface simultaneously. Integration requires unstacking the field, not attacking the surface layer. Okay, people that just say, let go and release that emotion, that's okay for temporary energy work. You can remove it from the body. But for long-term reprogramming of your belief systems, this work is absolutely required. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The original belief is, I want to succeed. Okay, that's the desire. So we hold this emotion of desire, and underneath this, you actually have a feeling of fear. And your belief beneath that is, I am afraid I will fail. Okay. So you keep holding, you hold on to that fear, and underneath that fear comes up envy. I resent those who seem to succeed easily. Okay. And so you sit with that envy, and then comes up shame. Shame is the strongest emotion that comes up. I am ashamed of my envy. Okay. You hold the shame for a while in your body, and you start to observe that from there arises self-hatred. I hate myself for not being further along. Okay, so you sit with that self-hatred. Underneath that self-hatred arises self-judgment. I judge myself for still struggling. Allow yourself to sit with that self-judgment for a while, and you keep observing, and it collapses into this exhaustion. I suppress all of it. Okay, so we are constantly moving up and down this ladder every day. You guys have maybe 4 or 5 main themes that you're moving through, you're struggling through, that are your patterns. You can identify this original concept very easily by just looking at the past 24 hours at your strongest emotion, looking at the past week, looking at the past month, the past year. You're going to have one emotion that always keeps popping up to the surface. Okay, that's where you want to start working. And when you start to embody that emotion for long enough, and instead of being stuck in the feeling sensation of that emotion, you switch to the observer of the emotion. You identify where it's in your body, and you begin to extract the information. This is what you're going to get. Okay. Let's talk about the emotional energy map. As I was just saying, what happens? How is the process of feeling this emotion? Okay, let's talk about fear. This descending current, energetically, fear gathers life force around survival. In healthy proportions, it sharpens your perception. Okay, but when we experience fear chronically, the field contracts and attention descends towards threat detection. Constant. We talked about that yesterday. Shadow inversion. I cannot trust myself. Mastery transforms fear into discernment, preparedness, and appropriate caution. The intuition workbook that I published yesterday is all about this right here. How to master this and embody this process. Okay. Worry. I have a W there already. Which is a circular expenditure. It's an ongoing circular system. Okay. Worry repeatedly moves life force into unresolved thought. The mind believes if I think about this enough, I can prevent danger. The energy does not compete. It circles again and again. The shadow inversion. If I stop worrying, I am irresponsible. Right? If I stop worrying, I mean, how many of you are constant chronic worriers about things? The person may unconsciously believe tension itself is protective. Mastery separates useful cognition from compulsive energetic rehearsal. Anger, the rising current. Anger carries mobilizing force. Move, push, separate, protect, act. When rejected, this upward force becomes constrained as pressure without movement. Turned inward, I should have known better. I hate myself. I deserve punishment. The aggressive force that should establish a boundary is turned against identity. Mastery recovers direction into creating boundaries and decisive action. Hatred and jealousy, the heart field. Okay. These emotions are particularly dense because they combine attachment, comparison, fear, rage, desire, loss, identity, and shame. What I find in hatred and jealousy, primarily jealousy, is we are really tied up in our sexual energy body. It's a very, very complex, one of the most complex next to shame. I would say jealousy is one of the most complex energy systems. When it's turned inward, okay, I hate that I care. I hate my jealousy. I hate my weakness. Now the field contains jealousy plus shame about jealousy plus aggression towards the jealousy itself. The recursive stack of extraordinary density beneath the wound may be unclaimed desire and abandoned attachment. The release current, grief, contains profound energetic intelligence. Healthy grief moves, it breathes, it softens, it empties. When rejected, I should still care. The release mechanism itself becomes interrupted. The field continues holding what consciousness refuses to mourn. Mastery allows a full arc: recognition, feeling, mourning, release, reorganization. Okay, but what ends up happening is that we turn grief into this constant feeling. It's also connected with a lot of shame because we feel ashamed of our emotions, of what we feel. It can also be connected with anger, a tremendous amount of anger. The principal transformation: do not destroy the energy. Remove the distortion. Discover what the energy becomes when consciousness no longer twists against itself. Okay, that is the invitation. Let's talk about working with the energy body when we're working with emotions. I've talked many times that when we work with very heavy emotions, we need to work in two layers. One is psychological with the emotional body, and two, it's energetic. In all of my work, from all the years that I've been working with people, I do not suggest to only do one or the other. And I know this is true because we are multidimensional beings. And the way that we store memory of emotions is not just in the thoughts and the beliefs of those experiences. They're deeply interconnected with muscle movements, nervous system pathways. I mean, biochemical responses, addictions. Okay, so we have to help energetically. So we want to cleanse before energizing. And this is very true for spiritual bypassing, because the danger of spiritual bypassing, one of the most important principles across advanced energetic healing systems, is do not continually add energy to an unresolved pattern. If someone carries the deepest structure of I am unworthy and simply layers over it, I am powerful, okay, like affirmations, okay, that's why affirmations are good, but only when they're used in a very conscious, felt, embodied manner. Embodied is key. If you're just repeating mantras and saying things, you're not doing anything. You might feel good for a little bit, but you're not reprogramming the deep subconscious. And the deep subconscious is the restructuring of our multidimensional energy system. It is the energy pathways within the body. It is this, advanced geometry systems that are advanced light processes. The actual meaning of high vibration is the ability to shift the architectural geometric structure of light in the body. And the only way to do that is the integration of these deep belief systems, okay, at the subconscious. And repeating words to yourself that you don't know how to feel, or you don't know how to embody or integrate or project or behave is completely useless. The original structure may remain completely untouched. Now both programs coexist. The person becomes highly energized, but still organized around unworthiness. This can amplify performance, grandiosity, overwork, compulsion, or emotional volatility. Equally dangerous is moving consciousness upward into crown, cosmic identity, or divine light when the lower systems are still screaming, I'm terrified, I'm ashamed. Spirituality itself can become another mechanism of disassociation. Guys, if I would say that this entire challenge was about one thing, it's about this little tiny paragraph right here. Okay? Because truthfully, this is one of the most powerful elements of blocked and disassociative, non-integrated awareness. Okay? If we are not actually changing and rechanging our core belief systems and programs, you literally cannot understand anything more than that. And it becomes another point of you wanting to leave the body, of course, because you are creating more war inside the body. You are creating duality within yourself. The only way to integrate and to embody unity consciousness, if at all, is to be able to integrate duality in all layers of your psyche. Okay? How to do it? Here's a small little step-by-step process. First of all, acknowledge what is actually present without attempting to change it. Non-judgmental observer. Second, release. Allow the charge to move and complete its natural arc. Let's say you feel an intense amount of grief. Okay? Allow yourself to feel that grief fully in the body. Observe where it's moving in the body. Reconnect with your body to feel fully what is happening. Don't check out. This is the part where people want to just run away and do something else. And people can't get past the shadow work because this is the tough part. Recirculate it. Let the reclaimed life force return to the whole system. Guess what? When you observe an emotion, even the most powerful grief, and you start to name out the emotions that you feel as you allow yourself to feel fully, to let it move fully through the body, even if it takes an hour. I've sometimes in my past experiences, I've had to sit for 8 hours processing an emotion through the body because there are layers and layers. And let me tell you something, the more you lack being in the present moment, the more you're going to be taking time to recirculate these emotions through the body. Okay? The more present you are, that's why being present is not just some spiritual slogan. It is the key of compassion towards your body into a life that is deeply integrated and purposeful. Okay, because we then accumulate years, lifetimes of being completely disassociated from our true feelings and emotions. And then, of course, shadow work seems daunting, but it's not. Because once you start to observe your main patterns, you'll notice that all of your deepest, darkest emotions follow the same behavior. Okay? Or replenish. Only now introduce new organizing principles and nourishment. This is how you heal illness. This is how you heal depression, distortion, fears, anxieties, pains in the bodies. Time and time again, I have tested this process over and over and over and over again with the most seemingly insignificant emotion to the most incredibly powerful emotions that I have ever felt. The master teaching is ascend without abandoning the body, descend without losing consciousness. The entire vertical axis must become capable of carrying consciousness not only in the upper centers. We're talking about the cultivation of the Merkaba in energetic language. In alchemy, the gold is energy without the wound. This is one of the most important teachings. The energy itself is not the problem. The distortion is the problem. The consciousness can hold the energy without attaching it to the shadow, stops consuming life force, and begins returning it. Okay? Anger, boundary, and will. Envy is direction. Grief, release. Fear, discernment. Shame, consciousness. Hypervigilance, sensitivity. In anger, the protective force that was turned inward recovers its original direction to become courageous, decisive action without maintaining hostility. So many people ask me, well, how do I identify how to heal this? Okay, so let's say at the root it's anger. Okay, and in this case, what is the opposite of anger? In this certain example, it was to be courageous. Okay, maybe we were angry because we weren't able to stand up for ourselves. And so to have the courage to act on this boundary, on this will, would then translate into a decisive action without maintaining hostility. You don't need to be defensive and aggressive towards another person. Okay, so if you're not familiar with what courage feels like, you have to go down this path. Okay, so to embody courage, what would you need? What would you need from yourself towards yourself to embody courage? That's the question. And if you don't know, all you have to do is feel courage in your body and notice what emotions come up. The courage will teach you. Envy, creating direction. The comparison that stung becomes the precise map pointing towards the unclaimed desire and abandoned life potential. Okay. So every single one of these emotions is helping you understand the alchemy. You want to understand the opposite of that emotion and how to feel it fully in the body. Let's talk about what happens in the biology. Okay. The body doesn't respond only to external threat. This is fundamental to understanding the biology. The stress system evolves to respond to something is threatening me, but human consciousness can continuously regenerate threat through memory, anticipation, rumination, self-criticism, shame, imagined rejection, and internalized voices. The threatening stimulus can therefore become the self. The person who carries chronic self-hatred wakes up every morning to an internal environment that continually signals danger, danger, danger. How many of you wake up every morning with anxiety? Okay. The original external prosecutor may have been a parent, a caretaker, a peer, a relationship, But eventually the organism reproduces the prosecutor internally. This is how you become your own abuser. And the body continues adapting to that internal environment because we can't distinguish between the original external threat and the generated internal one. Okay, so if the belief system is my body is unacceptable, my emotions are unacceptable, my sexuality is unacceptable, my weakness is unacceptable, my needs are unacceptable. The organism now lives with the source of threat 24 hours a day. What does that do to you biochemically? This experience, you created an appraisal for the experience. You activate a threat detection. Then we have autonomic signaling, and then we have immune adaptation, which is really sad because the body, as I mentioned yesterday, that is in hypervigilance, hypersurvival all the time, we are just creating cortisol. And cortisol is essential, but when it rises to stress regulation, becoming chronically overused, and we can't terminate it. We don't know how to extinguish that. This repeated stress can produce either exaggerated or blurred HPA response rather than simply high cortisol. Consider this recursive mind-body feedback at the heart of self-directed shadow. Rejection is belief. Nobody wants to hurt me, which is self-attack because I am not enough. Threat response, bodily sensation, heart pounding, tension, heat, and we interpret something is wrong with me. More than threat, the cycle begins again. The psychology becomes evidence for the psychological belief, and the belief produces additional physiology. Okay, so take a look, and I want you to notice, what are you repeating this recursive loop in your life? We talked about allostatic load. Okay. And so the problem with this is that the immune system becomes compromised. Inflammatory signaling is on overdrive. Cardiovascular function, people that have heart problems, metabolic processes, oxidative stress markers, shortened telomeres. Okay. And so the price is very high because the price is extended physical suffering. Let's talk about shame. Shame is especially relevant because when we turn this belief into something happened to me, into something is wrong with me, while the research on shame psychologically correlates, continues to develop, and findings vary considerably between individuals, shame reliably involves networks associated with social threat and bodily self-awareness. The shame collapse. Your eyes will lower, your head will drop, your chest collapses inward, shoulders round, breath becomes shallow, your abdomen contracts, vocal expression reduces. The psychology says, do not see me. The body organizes around make me smaller. This is the somatic architecture of shame. The body learns posture of belief. How does this organize the body? Literally in the fascia. It's, the thing about the fascia is such a magnificent crystallized system that is living, and the fascia is one of the most interesting parts of the body because it is directly responding to bioelectric emotional charges. Okay. Repeated emotional states recruit repeated patterns of posture, breathing, muscular activation, movement, avoidance, vocal tone. If the belief is I am unsafe, it keeps going into this constant bracing. Okay. And so we must remain small. Psychological, expectational, and body pattern reinforces in another. Energetically, what this looks like in the shame collapse is that the entire energy body becomes contracted. Okay, the entire energetic field. Remember that we have a multidimensional layer of 13 dimensional layers of the body. The only ones that are visible, barely, are the first three layers of the body. The root, the sacral, and the solar in the body. Because these are the primary energy systems that process this density of emotion. So when this is a primary baseline for you, your entire energy body is contracted. And you're not sleeping well, you're not having out of body experiences, you're not lucid, your ability to master lucidity is very, very low. Okay? So, I mean, we can go down a massive list, but let's talk about the epigenetic layer. What epigenetics actually means, just a quick review. When we talk about epigenetics, it does not mean your thoughts magically rewrite your DNA. Epigenetics concerns regulatory process that influence gene activity without changing the underlying DNA sequence. Key mechanisms include DNA methylation, histone modifications, chromatin regulation, non-coding RNAs, and transcriptional regulation. Stress-related epigenetic research has particularly investigated that systems regulating the body's stress response, two genes are especially relevant: the NR3C1 and the FKBP5. NR3C1 encodes the glucocorticoid receptor, how cells respond to cortisol and regulate HPA axis feedback. FKBP5 helps regulate glucocorticoid receptor sensitivity, influencing how stress response is calibrated. So the biological system is continuously asking, what kind of environment am I living in? Safe, predictable, dangerous, scarce, supportive? The organism adapts accordingly. Early adversity has been associated with epigenetic differences in stress regulatory pathways. The research purpose, these may contribute to altered stress responsivity later in life. The shadow becomes biologically interesting when the old environment is gone, but the internalized environment continues. The parent is gone, the humiliation ended, the trauma, the severe abuse. The original threat is past, but internally, the prosecutor remains and the organism continues to receive danger, danger as a message. So please understand that your greatest takeaway from today's topic is a deep understanding that we literally become our own predator. And this is how we talked about the relationship with abuser. Okay. And I see this time and time again in my practice in every possible example you can ever think of, from people that have been sexually abused, people that have been physically abused, verbally abused, emotionally abused. Every possible abuse that you could think of has been internalized and integrated into the person. And the person continues to enact that same behavior towards themselves, which ultimately results in some kind of parasitic behavior. Okay. And so when I talk about parasitism, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. Because you have to understand that the DNA, your DNA, this multidimensional, beautiful system that operates in the quantum field, is connecting all dimensional layers. And when we talk about deterioration to the DNA, this is one of the ways that we deteriorate our own DNA. The DNA is the interface of consciousness. Okay, so other things that influence your DNA are your environment, your eating habits, all of those external things as well. But this is the most pervasive because this is what you're with 24 hours a day, even in your dream state. Because if you have whatever belief systems you have in your waking state are what you're going to be experiencing in your dream state. Okay, self-hatred as predator and prey. This is the central image for understanding biology of day 7. The internal critic attacks. You're disgusting. The organism experiences the threat. The organism responds defensively. Okay. We continue this continuous cycle of integration. And we really want to stop becoming this, what is it called? Not predator. I wanted to say parasite. In the same way that we embody this, we are also contributing to the collective parasitism. Okay. And that's something a lot of people have a hard time understanding. But whatever wars you have internal to you is being amplified and expressed in a larger manner in this universe because we live in a fractal model of things. Okay. Um, you cannot numb these emotions. You cannot desensitize yourself from feeling the emotions. Okay. And a lot of times when you cannot feel emotions, it doesn't mean you don't have them. A lot of times it means that you have disassociated from these emotions. You've disconnected. And in the same way that memory blocks memory when something is too overwhelming to experience, your body does the same for your emotions. And so, however, there isn't a single person that I have worked with in however many years I'm doing this that has not been able to get to the root emotion. Why? Because the information is there. You just need to understand how to access that information. If you are a person that doesn't remember their entire childhood experiences, but you are able to have this tiny little one emotion that you've always felt as a child, which is the constant feeling of anxiety, constant feeling of fear, constant feeling of loneliness. That's it. That's all you need. That is your gateway to accessing, recovering memory, integrating yourself. All of this shadow work can be available to you. Another thing that I've noticed in the years of working with this level of deep integration is that we tend, when we are disconnected from our bodies and connected from our emotions, especially when we really compartmentalize and we have a compartmentalized ways of thinking of good and bad. And this happens a lot for people that have very strong religious roots, okay? Because in many religions, there's sins, there's things that are good, there's things that are bad. That kind of mentality in itself is creating a split within your human experience, psychologically, emotionally, physically. And how that's processed, internalized, is that you create splits with emotions that are connected to those activities or those behaviors. Okay. And that's a problem because we create this really profound, deep split. And so what happens is that for a lot of these people that have a lot of religious roots, when they look back at their childhood, they think their childhood was amazing. Oh, it was great. I had everything. I had such good parents. Maybe they're comparing it with other families that were very, very terrible, for example, so to speak. However, there isn't a single person on this planet. It doesn't matter if you come from the highest affluent family. There's always a misconception that people that come from affluent families, well-educated families, they have no traumas. And you only need to look at the deeper layers to begin to know that that's not true. When you start to look at these emotions, where you start to look at your childhood and you think, oh, my childhood was fine. It was great. I had everything. I had both parents. They were there. Or, I only had one parent, but it was good. We were handling things fine. Usually this is a layer of defense that we cultivate, just like we create numbness towards certain memories and emotions, because we have not had the ability to process or access. We hadn't have the permission to feel our true emotions about those childhood experiences. We were told, you know, you don't feel that, or don't look at that, or it's a shame to feel those ways. And this usually takes a little while to excavate into those emotional layers. Okay. And so a lot of times we have avoidance. We avoid feeling certain things, acknowledging certain things. We just feel like, oh, it's okay. It's okay what happened, or, whatever experience happened, it's fine. And we want to disassociate. I can tell you that A person that embodies this pattern of behavior, they will never be able to reach a level of deep, integrated, unified consciousness because you've never touched certain ranges of frequencies within your body. And in order to be multidimensional, to access high dimensional intuitive capacities, vision, to connect to many of the things that you need to encounter as this multidimensional human in the both physical and non-physical realm, you need to look at those parts of yourself. Okay. And there's many ways of doing it. But to avoid these emotions is a major disservice to the cultivation of your power, because in those memories is your hidden power. It's all the things that you can't resolve in your life, but you don't know where the root is. Okay. How do we embody DNA reprogramming in full integration? Here is an example. After a terrible experience, we have an old prediction that says, if I say no, I will be abandoned. You kind of go through those layers of emotions that we did in the other graph. Okay, whatever emotion comes up there. And we then discover that in the new experience, I said no and I survived. Okay, nothing happened. You said no and you weren't punished. No one retaliated, no one rejected you. In the old prediction, we think if I express my anger, I become dangerous. In the new experience, I express the boundary without violence. The old prediction is if I rest, everything falls apart. The new prediction is I rested and the world continued. If experience can contribute to biological adaptation, then integration cannot be imagined merely as thinking different thoughts. It requires repeated experiences that are contradicting the old prediction. The old system predicts a specific outcome. The body must live through a different one for the prediction to lose absolute authority. So in DNA reprogramming, we exercise what it feels like to feel the new emotion. And not only that, but we observe how our environment responds to that, to us embodying the new, so that we can see for ourselves and experience absolutely in truth what happens. And you teach yourself the new experience. You survive. You teach yourself that you actually will make it through. You teach yourself that you expressed and you didn't have violence. You teach yourself that the world continues even when you are calm and rested. This is how the alchemy is integrated in the body. The new belief system must become the new experience. This is where psychology becomes biology again, but in the direction of integration rather than the wound. And this may be one of the deepest biological meanings of shadow work. The body no longer has to organize its presence around the expectation of the past. This is how you train yourself to come fully into the present moment. Okay, we're going to go into a practice of this. And I created a 13 steps of accessing the descent into the root, step by step. Okay, so if you want, you're going to be accessing this entire process in you can buy this workbook in my store. Okay. I'm going to walk you through this meditation, and then we can kind of reference these slides. Okay, so go ahead and get really nice and comfortable. Allow yourself to come into a deep state of relaxation and calm. You're going to ground yourself down to the center of the earth. Ground yourself down to the center of the earth. Create a field around your body made out of something impenetrable. You're going to shrink the first three chakras of your body, the root, the sacral, the solar. Expanding the heart. The throat and the third eye. Expanding your crown. I want you to bring a powerful healing color. You can select what color that is. What is the most healing color for you? You're going to pull that up from the center of the earth. Rotating into the center core of your body. Breathing. Breathing deeply down to the base of your spine. Bring gold cosmic energy down through the crown of your head, combining with this healing energy from the earth. Take 10% back down to the center of the earth. Clear your energy body. Go ahead and see the bubble around you. You're going to clear it front to back, side to side. Clean out all the debris, blockages, thought forms that you are sensing, feeling, knowing in your energy body. Take 80% of that combination up your spine and from the crown of your head, coating the outside of your bubble. Neutralize your relationship with the matrix. Cut cords with people, places, and things, and call your energy back into your body. Pick the final 10% of that healing color and cosmic gold color, and you're going to absorb it into your body now, into the pores, to the fascia, the muscles, the bones, the cells of the body, transmuting whatever needs to be transmuted in the body. Allow yourself to feel fully contained inside of your bubble. There's no openings, no tears, no leaks. Your attention is fully in the present moment in your body. Bring yourself fully into the body. Breathing. Deepen your breath. I want you to go ahead and select one of these very, very deep emotions that you have trouble processing. These powerful emotions. I want you to feel it in your body. Should be pretty easy for it to come up in the body because it's probably already there in the back end. I want you to allow yourself to feel that emotion in your body fully. You're going to observe this emotion in your body. And go ahead and name out the emotions that come up as you begin to descend into the layers of this emotion. As you name out this emotion, the raw emotion, notice the parts of your body that start to contract. Notice how the emotion moves through the body. Allow yourself to identify that emotion in the body, the strongest one. Name it out. Notice as you allow these emotions to move through your body, more information arises. You're just going to observe without judgment. And go ahead and select the strongest of these emotions. Try to go as deep as possible and allow this root emotion to speak and say what it feels. What is the belief that is being created by that emotion? And you can name out the emotions that come up as you feel it. As you continue to acknowledge, take yourself back to the very, very first time that you experienced this emotion. Try to go as deep as possible. As you begin to observe the belief that is created in this root emotion, I want you to ask yourself, why do you need to believe this? And what does this belief protect you from? And towards the voice that is attacking, that is punishing or judging, you're going to ask, what are you trying to stop from happening? What do you believe would happen if you stopped attacking? You stopped attacking yourself with this emotion. As you begin to observe these beliefs, I want you to notice what part of you has been suppressed as a result. What capacity or gift are you suppressing underneath these behaviors? And you can also see how they go down your family lineage. Take a look at what has been hidden from you. What part of life has been suppressed as a result of these beliefs? What part of yourself have you annihilated in order to keep this belief alive within yourself in all your life experiences? Notice the part of your body that holds this memory the most, and you can put your hand on that part of the body, gently releasing. Allow yourself to fully alchemize this belief. You might say you are allowed to exist without controlling my behavior. To anger, you might say, you may exist, I will decide what action is wise. Maybe it's shame, you may be felt, you do not define what I am. Notice what you need to tell this part of you, your body, yourself, the many parts of you. Allow yourself to see all the fractals of yourself that have experienced this behavior as a result of this belief, and see them in a crowd in front of you. I want you to fill them with this deep understanding. And as you see all these fractals of yourself, allow them to embody this new understanding and see how they transform. Embody this in your own body here and now. So let's say you are alchemizing shame and you discover that the opposite of shame is authenticity. I want you to fill your body with authenticity. Embody that authentic self. Notice how your muscles in the body shift, nervous system shifts, breathing shifts. A contraction of your muscles are lightening, loosening. Your jaw might drop in a more relaxed state. Your eyes might loosen up their contraction, their tension. You might be able to breathe more expansively. Notice how your perception has changed. Perhaps your perception is a bit more expanded and flexible. And you're going to turn this feeling into an emotion, a color. Turn this emotion into a color. And you're just going to fill yourself up with that color. And just notice how you are reallocating your resources at this time in your body. And go ahead and do the same for all of your fractals that you have found. Observe your entire ancestral lineage and show them as well how to do this. Invite them if they are curious. And you're going to see all your fractals that have experienced this and bring them into one in front of you. I want you to integrate this fractal into your body. And I want you to really familiarize yourself with this new understanding. You're teaching your mind, body, and the soul. You're reminding yourself what it's like to embody this different kind of program within yourself. Very good. Go ahead and visualize a room full of karmic contracts. You're going to dissolve those contracts completely, utilizing your crown chakra. Turn your crown chakra into a laser or a light or whatever you want to imagine. And when you shine that light on top of that room full of contracts, you dissolve each of those contracts until the room is completely empty. And as you clear that room of all those karmic contracts, you're going to fill that room with your creative color. Go ahead and open your root chakra, clean the root chakra, spin it until it's crystalline clear. the sacral, the solar, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. Allow yourself to see your energy body around you, completely solid without any holes. And you're going to ground yourself and you're going to activate the 8th chakra, the 9th, 10th, the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. And above you is a powerful white light of source. Connect up into that source, anchor that source all the way down into the base of your spine, into the perineum, into the earth. As you allow yourself to come back into the room, go ahead and open your eyes. You guys did amazing. Welcome back. Okay, so I hope you were able to work with one of those emotions. I hope you were able to find. And I just want you to share one thing that you learned about this powerful emotion and how it moves in your body. You can share one thing of these, questions that we asked, like what part of the body, what was the judgment that it wrote about yourself, what is it that what is the belief system that was created, and what did you need in order to alchemize that? If you want to share any of that process with us, I would really love to hear. It's always really useful to hear your processes because a lot of people relate to exactly what you've been through. Okay. And yeah, it'd be awesome to share that with others. So, two things that I want you to just notice whenever you are doing this work is you're not trying to get rid of any of emotions. You don't want to stop feeling this, but you want to ask what you need. Okay. So here's a couple questions that you're asking instead to correct the perception. What is this emotion doing? What is it protecting? What is it preventing? What does it remember? What does it believe? Does it defend? Does it predict? What would happen if it has disappeared? Okay, so these are different ways to move and work with these dark emotions. Don't confuse feeling with action. You can acknowledge, I feel hatred without harming anyone. You can acknowledge, I feel empty without sabotaging other persons. You can acknowledge, I feel rage without becoming violent. The emotion is information. That's all emotions are. They're just providing information about our environment. It's not a command to act. And I talked many times on this channel in different series about how emotions, when you get to know them, you might realize that the way you have learned to react to an emotion or how to react an emotion out is a learned process. It might not be 100% true for you. So I want you to take a look at your relationship with emotions and how much of those are actually true. Okay. All right, my love. So you're going to have all this process that you can work through in the workbook, but the workbook will allow you to record the process to begin to answer these questions for yourself. And, I really want you to go deeper into these emotions. Okay. When you take a look at how these emotions have affected you in your life, it really is really impactful. And you might not realize how your entire personality, your behavior has been built around some of these survival mechanisms. Okay. You might not realize the kind of energy that you're holding on a daily basis. You might be in constant survival. And so your face looks a certain way, your body language is a certain way. The things that you choose are very specific. And we just make these own little, as they call it, like a gilded cell, right? It's like a golden cell. We become slaves to these perceptions, these behaviors, these emotions. So I want you to really tap into the intelligence of the emotion and how can you alchemize that into a way that can manifest into a mature expression of that in your body, in your life. What would that look like? The alchemy of that. Not the wounded version of yourself that has been damaged by these experiences, but the one that has already embodied the wisdom and can apply that into your everyday life. That's the full integration process. Okay. And yeah, we kind of went through that already. I guess the whole point of this entire conversation of today is that we are slowly through this deep descent into the shadow work. We are learning how to embody unity consciousness, not only embody it, but shift our perception into a unity conscious a way of being, feeling, seeing, doing, acting, and co-creating. Because this is how we change. We are evolving our human race into a new human race. It requires all these steps because you can't be a new human race. You can't access telepathy, remote viewing, higher intuitive capacities without cleaning out your house first, cleaning out the clutter. And this is the clutter. This is at the base of all of that. Okay. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. As always, it was an honor. I hope that this presentation was help for you. I hope that it was something that has supported you. I'm going to jump into the questions really quick and see if I can answer any questions. If you have questions, put them in capital letters so I can see it very clearly, because I have a lot of comments here, which I'm so happy to see. Victoria says, how does a strong emotion like desire play into shadow work? And how far should we give into desire versus observing from 0 point? Yeah, so I hope you asked this question a little early on in the presentation. So I hope I answer that question by going deeper into these layers. But desire, for example, is something that you might have learned. I want you to first identify, like, what is the program that you've learned about desire, right? What does desire mean to you specifically? Is it something that we're not allowed to have? You want to question why, okay? Why? Why do you have those beliefs? All those list of questions that I just showed you earlier, those are the questions you want to ask when you face your desire and your relationship with desire. Okay. And looking from the 0 point, ultimately, it doesn't mean you're not going to have desire. So there's duality to everything, even each emotion. Okay, that's another thing that we don't really realize. But desire has a light and a dark, right? The desire is a motivating force. It's a creative potential. And that desire can move us to create things, it could be the desire to help people, not specifically, but just that energetic forward movement of creation can be utilized for good or for bad. Okay, so it's not so much about compartmentalizing. Do we need to look at it from the 0 point? This is one of the tools. Desire is an emotion. It's an intelligence. It's a tool. It's information that we utilize to do something, whatever we want to do. So take a look at your relationship with desire and what's your specific perception about desire. How were you taught desire was good or bad? How do you play that out? How do you act on your desires? So on and so forth. And the observer from 0 point exists throughout all this entire process because that's the one that's going to be excavated into these questions. Okay, excavating into these questions. Wow, you guys shared some of your emotions. Shame, Christine says. Josepha says fear of death. Yep, that's a big one. We're going to be talking about fear of death in deeper in the shadow. Nick, sadness. That's huge. Amazing. Andrew Gnomes, welcome. Nick, welcome. Joseph, it's so on point. Awesome. Jason, welcome. Nick, so good to see you. Celeste Michelle, yes, thank you for being here. This high frequency definition is really interesting. Yeah. Anger is taboo in my body, especially expressing it. Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. So a lot of us have the same emotions, and that's the thing. Crazy how science is intrinsically complementary to our spirituality. Yeah, baby. Yeah. And this is the new science, okay? It will be the new science in very vast ways across all scientific realms. I'm so excited. That's like a future which I am familiar with, I've lived through, and I'm excited for that to be part of our human reality. Thank you so much for being here, Soul Star. Yay, welcome. Cosmic Joe, so good to seeing you. How do we get the workbook? Yeah, so you can get the workbook on my website. I'm going to post a link. It's not published yet. When I upload this video, we're going to publish it. So I'll add it to the show notes and I'll add it to a comment underneath this video that you guys can purchase it if it supports you. Okay. But yeah. Yes, please do like, share, and subscribe. I always forget to say that. Thank you for reminding me. Sam Kim, good to see you. Uma, whatever, says, why is there so many earthquakes happening during Lionsgate? Well, I actually have kind of been connecting to the earth to look at what's happening. And, just the way we are going through our deep shadow during these next few years, especially now until 2027, next year will also be another one of these powerful years. I mean, everything is energy. Okay. So, in the same way that we are changing our vibrational frequency of the humanity collectively, so is the earth. The earth is going through a transformation as well in terms of frequency. And it is changing its vibrational frequency, not in a way where the poles are going to shift or the hertz of the earth is going to change tremendously, even though it is actually changing very, very minimally, little by little. This is something that is happening. It's part of the shift of this earth. And every single part of the planet is, it's a self-organizing energy structure as well that's connected to our bodies. So this Pacific area, the Ring of Fire, is very connected to some of the primordial energies of humanity. Okay, it's the first three chakras of the body. So we have to learn how to flush that energy out, heal it. As I'm telling you, the earth is a reflection of you. You are a reflection of the earth. There's no separation between that. So I mean, that's another reason why I'm doing this challenge right now. The deeper we go into cleaning some of our shadows that we're so unconscious about, this is also reflected in the collective. Okay. So I'll share that with you. But I love you so much. Thank you for being here. It's an honor, and I will see you soon. Bye. Much love. See you.